The last stages of YNW Melly's trial have revealed shocking information. The prosecution has extensively relied on cell phone data as well as social media messages to build their case against Melly. And as they recently revealed, Melly may have confessed to killing his friends. So what exactly did the YNW rapper post that proves he committed the murders? Let's find out. Melly snitches on himself.
We're going to have a break in the case of a double murder in Miramar.
2 people now behind bars, including a South Florida rapper who actually sings a popular song about murder.
Jamel Maurice Demons, alias YNW Melly, was charged with the murder of his 2 best friends, Anthony Williams, alias YNW Sack Chaser, and Christopher Thomas, alias YNW Juvie. The day he turned himself in on February 13th, Miramar police tweeted, Jamel Demons, aka YNW Melly, and Cortland Henry have been arrested and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The victims, Anthony Williams and Christopher Thomas Jr., were killed on October 26, 2018. The investigation, supported by forensic evidence, has concluded that Demons shot and killed Williams and Thomas Jr., and that Demons and Henry staged the crime scene to resemble a drive-by shooting. Melly has had to wait for his trial for about 4 years while in jail. And now, as the case draws to a conclusion, the prosecution has revealed a lot of shocking information that puts Melly in a bad light and makes him look guilty. One of the most damning pieces of evidence was found on Melly's Instagram account. While rappers are known to self-snitch from time to time, Melly may have just ended his life with a single Instagram DM. During the prosecution's opening statements, they revealed that they had an incriminating Instagram text that Melly had sent to fellow rapper Peasy Gambino. It turns out that Peasy had reached out to Melly the morning the shooting happened to confirm whether the YNW rapper was okay.
One individual, and specifically, sends out, and I want to quote the message exactly that you will hear. Yo, homie, you good?
YNW Melly's reply was chilling and may prove crucial in the outcome of the case. The reply makes the rapper look guilty, as he may have snitched on himself and confessed to the murder. The prosecutor revealed that the rapper replied to the DM saying, I did that. Shh.
And Mr. Demons responds very succinctly, I did that. Shh.
Did this really prove that Melly had killed his 2 best friends, people he had grown up with? It is important to remember that Melly is facing the death penalty, so the prosecution has to prove without reasonable doubt that the rapper actually confessed to the murders in the Instagram text. The first problem that arises is the context in which the text message was sent. It is possible that the rappers were talking about anything. However, the prosecution shot this idea down by arguing that the only context that the message could have been sent was regarding the shooting that had happened earlier. This is because Melly had been flooded with messages that morning and all had a similar theme. They were inquiring about the tragic incident.
The context around the messages matters. So in the context of this message, this individual is reaching out, asking if Mr. Demons is good, after he's been tagged in multiple social media posts about this drive-through, this shooting.
According to the prosecutor, since everyone in Melly's DMs was asking him about the alleged drive-by, then that would have been the only thing he was responding to. Well, the defense had a well-crafted response to the text. One detail in the text may have saved Melly's life. As it turns out, the autocorrect feature may be Melly's saving grace. According to the rapper's defense, the spelling of the word that was not consistent with what the rapper used in other instances when he texted.
Will you tell the jury how he spells that? D-A-T.
According to Melly's defense attorney, all the text messages that the prosecution had brought up in the trial showed that Melly spelled the word that as D-A-T.
So when Melly spells the word that, you want me to go through all 19 pages? That every time, he does not spell it T-H-A-T, but D-A-T.
Did this mean that someone else was using Melly's phone? Was it even his phone, or did his friends also use the phone? More details were revealed in trying to answer this question. The prosecution proved that the phone in question was actually Melly's. Apparently, detectives found photos of a Western Union receipt with Melly's name and phone number, which tied the phone number to Melly's name.
To read the print down at the bottom of this Western Union.
It says, Jamel Demons, 604 9th Avenue, Vero Beach, Florida, 32962, USA, and phone number 772-713-9807.
However, one of Melly's friends, Adrian Davis, who was present with the group at the studio, took to the stand and gave a shocking revelation. It turns out that in the morning, after they received news that their friends had been shot and killed, they all rushed to their phones. However, Melly could not find his phone.
Did anyone get on the phone?
Yeah.
Did anyone have any problem locating their phone?
Yes.
Who was that?
Jamel.
This opened a whole can of worms. Where was Melly's phone this whole time? And if he did not have his phone at the time the incriminating text was sent, then who did? However, while on the stand, Davis revealed that multiple people often use Melly's phone. In fact, the whole crew used each other's phones from time to time.
We all use this phone sometimes. We all use each other's phones.
So where was Melly's phone? Well, the prosecution seemed to answer this question. According to them, detectives had used cell phone data to track the whereabouts of Melly's phone that morning. First, detectives were able to determine that the rapper was in possession of his cell phone while leaving the studio. Using CCTV footage, Melly can be seen leaving the studio building with his phone in hand. Melly and his crew left the studio in 2 cars. Cops used the phones from these 2 vehicles to track their locations throughout that morning. While the phones in the red Mitsubishi showed that it headed for Sunset Lakes, the phones in the gray Jeep showed that it took a detour. To prove that the data from the cell phones was accurately pointing detectives toward the Jeep's whereabouts that morning, the prosecution made it clear that Melly and Sackchaser's phones were the same make and model. Apart from that, the 2 also used the exact same cell phone plan, meaning that their phones were using the same service and cell towers. Therefore, if the data was accurate, the path taken by the 2 phones should be similar, which the prosecution tried to prove in the trial. By comparing the information from the 2 cell phones and tracking the vehicle's movements, detectives revealed that the Jeep traveled up to Pines Boulevard and then proceeded west to the edge of the Everglades. According to the prosecution, this area is desolate. The Jeep then continued further south and turned onto Pembroke Road. This is where the prosecution revealed a shocking detail. Pembroke Road dead ends at a trash facility. There are no residential houses in that area. Apart from that, there were no cameras that would have helped the cops to visually locate the car. The area did not have any streetlights or people passing, making it a perfect place to carry out the murders. The prosecution further revealed that there were no other cell phones at Pembroke Road that morning. This means that the 4 rappers were alone that night.
The state intends to show the evidence that the phone was there at the murder scene, and there were no other phones there. There is no one else out there at 4 in the morning.
Later, the prosecution revealed even more damning evidence. Melly made a FaceTime call to his then-girlfriend, Mariah Hamilton. This was also confirmed by Mariah's mother, who was also in the house when the call came in. This is because Mariah screamed, waking up her mother, who went to check what was going on. After getting off the FaceTime call, the rapper then sent a pin location at 4:42 a.m. to Frederick Givens, popularly known as Fredo Bang, a rapper from Louisiana. So who is telling the truth? Did Melly's friend lie under oath, or was the data collected from the cell phone towers inaccurate? Adrian Davis had a lot more to say while on the stand regarding that morning when they left the studio. According to his testimony, Melly was with them at the house. Surveillance footage clearly showed Melly getting into the gray Jeep. On the other hand, Davis left in the red Mitsubishi. So if the Jeep took a detour and went all the way to Pembroke Road while the Mitsubishi went to Sunset Lakes, how did Melly find himself at his house in Sunset Lakes together with the occupants in the red Mitsubishi? Well, according to Davis, along the way, their vehicle stopped and Melly hopped in.
Did there come a time that you were woken up before you got to the house?
Yes.
What happened?
We pulled over, and that's when Melly got in the car with us.
However, he was asleep and did not remember where they stopped. But one thing he was sure about was that when they got into the house, Melly was present with them. According to Davis, Melly was present with them when the news about the shooting and death of their friends came in. While Melly seems to have an alibi, another member of the crew who was also present that day took to the stand to testify. This was none other than Trayvon Glass, YNW Juvie's producer. At first, the defense had a problem with Trayvon taking the stand, citing that he had been dodging the cops for the past 4 years and that he heavily used marijuana. Apart from that, Trayvon was currently out on bail, and it seems he had been forced to be there. However, what he revealed when he was on the stand may blow Melly's alibi out of the water. According to his testimony, when they got to Melly's house in the red Jeep, the people who got into the car while at the studio were the ones who were present at the house.
When you got to the house gate at Melly's house, who was inside your vehicle, the red Mitsubishi?
Same people you seen get in the car.
According to Trayvon, Melly was not with them at the house, nor were they together when news reports came in of the alleged drive-by shooting. 2 people who were in the red Mitsubishi gave conflicting testimonies while on the stand. So who was lying under oath? It seems that the jury will have their work cut out for them with all this evidence. Although it did look as if Melly had just snitched on himself on an Instagram text, the defense may have been able to cast doubt and change the jury's mind. However, a lot of information seems to be putting Melly at the crime scene, most notably his cell phone. Apart from cell phone data, we will also see that many other people involved in the case may have used social media to confirm that Melly may have had a hand in the murders, or at least had something to do with them. prosecution versus defense. The prosecution and Melly's defense have been going at each other, with each camp presenting compelling evidence and arguments. First, it is important to remember that the death penalty is on the line for Melly. Therefore, both camps have had to bring their A game to court. The death penalty against Melly has been a hot topic of discussion that saw both the prosecution and the rapper's defense battle it out in court throughout the 4 years. The state of Florida had announced that it would seek capital punishment against Melly, as prosecutors were certain that they could prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the rapper murdered his 2 friends. According to court documents, prosecutors said that the murder was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel, and he committed homicide in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner. Although the prosecution sought the death penalty against Melly not long after the rapper's arrest in 2019, they received pushback 3 years later in 2022 when a judge ruled that Melly wasn't eligible to face the death penalty. This was because state prosecutors hadn't properly notified him and his team. However, Melly's relief was short-lived as the death penalty was put back on track. The 4th District Court of Appeal found that prosecutors acted properly, had already notified the court about the intention to seek death, and were not required to repeat the notification just because a new indictment had been handed up against the defendant. Bad news continued to stream in for the rapper as Florida Governor Ron DeSantis made it easier for defendants to get handed the death penalty. This is because, in April, the governor signed a bill into law that lowered the threshold for defendants to get handed the death penalty. The new law allows for the death penalty by an 8-4 vote. Previously, jurors had to vote unanimously 12-0 to impose the death penalty on a defendant. However, before Melly is found guilty of killing his best friends and handed the death penalty, the prosecution has to prove to the jurors without a reasonable doubt that Melly was responsible for the deaths of Sack Chaser and Juvie. So what has the prosecution revealed so far? Why are they certain that Melly and YNW Bortland staged the alleged drive-by? It is important to start with Bortland's version of events. According to police reports, YNW Bortland told cops that he, alongside his friends, had just left a studio where they had wrapped a late-night session. As they drove home, they were attacked by unknown gunmen. As he was pulling off the freeway, a car pulled up on the passenger side and opened fire. Luckily, he quickly ducked as soon as he heard shots being fired and escaped with his life. Surprisingly, Bortland told the cops that he did not see anyone or any car that night. After everything had died down, he was hit by a tragic realization. Lying lifeless in the car were Sack Chaser and Juvie. They had both sustained bullet wounds. In an attempt to save his friends, Bortland drove to the nearest medical facility in the early morning hours. When he arrived, he was frantically crying for help as Juvie and Sack Chaser were bleeding out in the car. According to those at the hospital, he claimed that they had been shot at a drive-by. This video shows Bortland speeding into the Memorial Miramar Hospital's driveway. While here, he can be seen running into the hospital to get help. So what evidence that the driver was lying? How could they prove that there was no drive-by and that Melly and Bortland had staged the whole thing? The first bit of evidence was Melly's sitting position in the car. According to detectives, the bullets that killed Juvie and Sack Chaser were fired from inside the car. What is even more shocking is that forensic analysis showed that the bullets were fired from the left passenger seat. Could the prosecution prove that Melly was seated in the left-hand passenger seat? A review of CCTV footage that showed the group leaving the studio that night was enough to help investigators determine that Melly had been sitting on the left rear passenger side of the gray Jeep Compass, as he is seen here taking his sit in the vehicle. At around 3:19 a.m., the group left the studio in 2 vehicles, a red Mitsubishi and gray Jeep. CCTV footage shows that both vehicles headed in the same direction. At around 3:50 a.m., the red Mitsubishi was captured on CCTV going through the guard gate at Sunset Lakes. At the time, they all lived in Melly's house, which was located inside Sunset Lake, a gated community. While the red Mitsubishi made its way into the gated community, the Jeep was nowhere in sight. That Jeep never made its way back home that day. As we have already seen, using phone data, detectives were able to track the Jeep as it traveled up to Pines Boulevard and then proceeded west to the edge of the Everglades and finally turned onto Pembroke Road. That was the perfect place to commit the crime. It is worth remembering that when Bortland had been taken in for questioning by the cops and had told his version of events, they acted swiftly and shut down the entire length of Miramar Parkway. This was the area where Bortland claimed the drive-by took place. However, when they searched the area, they did not find any evidence of a drive-by shooting. They then decided to cover more distance in search of the evidence of the incident by walking side by side for an hour and covering a mile-long stretch. According to them, having been involved in the tragic event, Bortland may have been confused about the precise area the shooting took place. However, their efforts came up empty, and soon the cops started casting doubt on Bortland's story. According to the prosecution, cops did not find shell casing, glass fragments, or even tire marks to show that a drive-by shooting had taken place. However, when they combed through the Jeep, which was now parked at the hospital, detectives found a spent shell casing. This is where the story gets even more bizarre. After months of investigation and obtaining the cell phone data that showed the Jeep on Pembroke Road, detectives swung into into action to investigate the area, and what they found was shocking. They found 8 spent shell casings that matched the one that they had found in the Jeep the morning that the murders took place. It was getting pretty clear that Bortland had lied about the location of the shooting. Second, 8 spent shell casings were found at the location that they drove to in the early morning of the murders. It is obvious that Bortland was hiding something. The most shocking detail that detectives uncovered was the trajectory of the bullets. The prosecution told the court that Juvie's fatal gunshot wound was to his left cheek, while Sackchaser's wound was on the left side of his neck. Both rappers' fatal wounds showed that they had been sustained by bullets that had traveled from the left to the right. According to Bortland's statement to the cops that morning, the car had been shot up from the right side and from the back. True to this, detectives found bullet holes on the right side of the vehicle. According to one of the state's witnesses, who was key in gathering forensic evidence, the first bullet was shot to the front, killing Sackchaser on the spot. Upon seeing this, Juvie put his hands up to signal surrender and got shot on his right thumb. As he bent low to protect his injured arm, he was shot on his left cheek and died on the spot as well. However, the rear windscreen was also shot up and broken. Remember, Bortland claimed that a car had pulled up beside them and shot at them. From this information, it was clear that something was not adding up. Forensic evidence showed that the bullets traveled from left to right, while the vehicle showed evidence of bullets moving from right to left. If Bortland was speaking the truth, then the fatal injuries could have been on the right side of the victims, which in this case did not happen. However, since he also claimed that he did not see anyone or any car during the ordeal, there is a possibility that bullets came in from the back of the car, which would have been consistent with the victim's wounds. But there was one problem. Juvie had what the prosecution called a defensive wound, which he sustained to his right hand. First, the prosecutor claimed that driver YNW Bortland could not have taken the shot, since the bullet wounds found on both victims would have been impossible from where he was sitting. However, it was entirely possible that Melly took the shots. This was also because the forensic experts found gunshot residue on the back of Sackchaser's seat as well as the back seat. Overall, the prosecution were hell-bent on showing that the two rappers were not killed as a result of a drive-by. They were determined to prove that it was Melly who shot and killed them. With evidence mounting on the rapper, his lawyers tried to make a case for his innocence. First, Melly's lawyers accused the detectives of being clout chasers. According to the defense, the lead detective had been quick to accuse Melly after he found out that he was a rising rapper. The attorney insinuated that this had led to the lead investigator failing to pursue other credible leads.
And then he discovered that Mr. Demons was a rising star. And from that point on, he decided he's the only person that could have committed this crime. Because if you're involved in prosecuting a star, you become a star.
The attorney argued that detectives had identified various leads, which they had ignored or had been briefly followed up on.
There are a number of leads that you will discover that were identified by the officers, but were either completely ignored or given short shrift.
One of the leads that the attorney pointed out was a man called Montrell Roll and his sister Nia Hewitt. It turns out that cops from another department had stumbled across jail calls between the two, which occurred within 3 days after the murder. The two discussed details of the murders that had not been made public, which gave a strong indication that they might have been involved. Although Hewitt was interrogated because of the conversation, detectives did not question her brother on the same meaning that cops had lost a lead that may have helped them in solving the murders. Another lead that the attorney argued could have been pursued more aggressively by detectives was a man called Robert Colbert. He owned a social media account that was used to post a message that may have led detectives to the murderers.
This social media account, almost immediately, within days after these murders, posts this message: LOL, we killed 2 of them.
The lawyer revealed that it took detectives 7 months to question Colbert. By this time, the suspect claimed that he had already sold the account, although he did not know who had bought it. Despite their efforts, more evidence has been presented that continues to portray their client as the murderer. Cell phones have played a crucial role in producing a lot of the evidence that has been used against Melly in this case. Not just from his phone, but messages between other people involved in the case. One of the most damning social media conversations that was unearthed by the prosecution involved Instagram messages between Melly's manager, 100K Track, and the mother of Melly's ex-girlfriend, Felicia Holmes. In the messages, she accuses Melly's manager of lying to her that they would take care of them. She also threatened to snitch on them. In the message, she says, "The promises that were made to us by YNW for me to quit my job and they would take care of us were all lies. They didn't want us talking with prosecutors, but now they have all disappeared. I quit my job based on what Track and his wife or company said. Now look, we can't go home. We spending all my money I worked for and they taking trips and enjoying life. If you think I was a beast before, wait until this trial. I'm not holding anything back. I'm doing what I should have done in the beginning. They can call me Miss Snitch." Why was she being taken care of financially by Melly's camp? Did she know something that she was not supposed to tell the cops? Something that would incriminate Melly? This was shocking. However, Mrs. Holmes was not done. In a separate Instagram message, she wrote, "They made me quit, told me that they would take care of us until the trial was over. But what? Lies as usual. I was making $9,000 weekly. I didn't need from them, but everybody begging and pleading. Now they all ghost. I got something for Track though. He lied to me and my child for the last time. Y'all can call me Miss Snitch because I'm airing his ass out to the prosecutor. I'm tired of him playing with people's lives. He f***ed with the wrong family." From the Instagram text, it seems Mrs. Holmes had been promised money to avoid talking to prosecutors. However, now that 100K Track had not held his end of the bargain, she threatened that she was going to let the cat out of the bag. In fact, Mrs. Holmes was not the only one that prosecutors revealed was receiving money to keep their mouth shut. Mr. Demons is doing anything and everything he can to prevent them from showing up, a prosecutor said. The defendant is causing these witnesses not to be available. According to prosecutors, after Melly's manager wired money to Mrs. Holmes, she suddenly stopped answering the state's phone calls. So what exactly did she know that she could use to threaten Melly's managers? Sadly, this might never be uncovered, as she did not answer most of the questions directed at her while in court. She claimed that she did not remember a lot of details since all this happened years ago. She did not seem like she wanted to be there, especially considering what the state had taken her through. It was revealed that at some point during the investigations, she was arrested in the Virgin Islands and was extradited back to Florida for avoiding her deposition. According to her, it was not her fault because the cops were sending the orders to the wrong address. Mrs. Holmes' deposition was also of particular interest as it revealed what seemed to be a motive for Melly to kill Sack Chaser. According to Mrs. Holmes, YNW Sack Chaser had sent pictures of his to Melly's girlfriend. This was not the only bone of contention between the two. Just 2 days before he met his death, it was alleged by Juvie's father that Sack Chaser had gotten into a physical confrontation with Melly. While in an interview, Juvie's father revealed that Sack Chaser had punched Melly in front of his then girlfriend, which may be attributed as a motive.
You know, you heard things about him and Anthony getting into like altercations about disputes about money over certain situations, and they got in a fight prior to that, and they said, like, you know, the story that they say Sack beat him up and knocked his goals out in front of his girlfriend.
This was not the only thing that Juvie's father revealed. According to him, there might have been a financial motive to the death of Sack Chaser and Juvie. He revealed that Juvie had opened up to him about a deal that would see the three artists, Melly, Juvie, and Sack Chaser, share $500,000 among them. Melly and Sack Chaser would get $200,000 each, while Juvie would get $100,000.
It's not reported, but Chris told me the same story, and also it was a $500,000 play, and Melly was going to get $200,000. Sack was going to get $200,000, and Chris was going to get $100,000.
The deal involved the sale of the YNW brand, and with the three being the founding members, they were all entitled to the revenue.
As I'm hearing it from Chris, they was going to sell the YNW brand, not a record deal or nothing like that. It was like for the brand itself. By them being founding members, they was going to get a piece of the pie.
Sack Chaser's mother, Janet Thompson, also confirmed the damning story about the $200,000 payment in her deposition. According to her, Sack Chaser had reached out to her a few days before he was killed. "My son hysterically called me," she said. "He was very concerned about my whereabouts. He was concerned about his sister's whereabouts. He's concerned like something is going to happen to us. And he told me that he would not get his money," she continued. "He said, I'm probably not going to get my $200,000. I'm probably not even going to get my money, Ma." The lead detective in the case also mentioned the deal in his deposition. According to him, Sack Chaser was set to receive around $200,000 from his record label. The police attempted to subpoena 300 Entertainment during their investigation in order to investigate this, but the company refused to honor the subpoena. The prosecution also revealed even more shocking texts that may prove that Melly had a reason to kill Sack Chaser. Text messages between Melly and Sack Chaser revealed that Sack Chaser was threatening the rapper and even threatening to kill his mom. According to the rapper, Sack Sack Chaser texted Melly, reminding him that he was not the only CEO of the YNW collective, that it belonged to the three of them, and because of that, Melly was supposed to share his money with them. Juvie's father has strongly expressed that he is sure Melly is guilty of the two murders. According to him, he had his suspicions from the very beginning that the rapper was responsible.
From the day one, I believe that Melly was responsible for my son's death on October 26th.
When Juvie's dad talked to them on FaceTime, they did not seem as if they were sad or grieving.
His explanation, when I finally talked to him in Portland on a FaceTime, their response and how they was reacting, they showed no remorse. They didn't act like they was grieving, like they lost a best friend or nothing. They was, in my opinion, they was in the best spirits.
This is the same sentiment that was shared by Sack Chaser's mom in a deposition. According to her, the surviving YNW crew member's response to her son's death was not what she expected. So I'm like, they've got to know something because they're not acting right. They're acting strange. She said, shockingly, Melly did not even attend any of his best friend's funerals. He went to Brevard to shoot a music video passing Sack's mom's home without going to check up on her.
They never came to town, never came to my son's funeral, never came to Sack's funeral. And these are best friends. He passed straight through the county of Indian River, went to Brevard and did a music video, but he couldn't even stop and pay his condolences to his best friend's mom.
In fact, video footage shown in court showed that the afternoon of the day that the murders were committed, Melly went to shoot a music video where he and YNW Bortland were seen in good spirits. Why was he in such good spirits after the deaths of his best friends had occurred barely some hours earlier? It is certainly not looking good for Melly. It is left to be seen whether he will actually beat the case. However, even if he beats this case, he still has another murder charge hanging over his head. Melly was named as a suspect in the shooting death of Deputy Gary Chambliss a couple weeks after being arrested on the double murder charge. According to a witness, Demon and Bortland were standing with a group of men who chucked a bottle at a passing car. An occupant in the vehicle fired a weapon at the group, and one of the rappers allegedly returned fire. Standing 170 yards away, Chambliss was hit with a stray bullet and died.